זמן לימוד זמן פאברנגן.
It's so disgusting. How can you do that? It's like nonetheless. Vein Fabrengen.
I'll take a couple of them. My work was like this. Turn on the coffee.
Yeah.
See, I've missed a few people on the way. Maybe he'll have feel around here.
What?
It's not as worse cold than it is there.
So just like it's going on in reference to Yutas Kislev. And we find a very similar thing when it gets to Hanukkah. The truth is that the Chassidim considered, and they even not only considered it, but they worked out a whole plan how they were going to do it. And when they asked the Alter Rebbe should they do it, then the Alter Rebbe didn't give the okay in the end. The very fact that they wanted to do it. What's your point?
Some water.
All right. The main thing is make it quick.
Don't worry. Don't worry.
They wanted to write what they called a Megillah Yutas Kislev. They wanted to write a Megillah. And that Megillah would be an official written document which would describe everything that happened in detail, all the details of the Alter Rebbe's arrest and what went on during his imprisonment and what he said to all of his captors, and then eventually the trial and what he said and what he wrote. It would all be drawn up in the form of a Megillah, and every Yutas Kislev they would read the Megillah. They would read in the Beis Knesset or in the Bati Medrash or in the different places, wherever the Chassidim would be throughout the world, and they would read the Megillah Yutas Kislev. Now, similarly, we find when we get to Hanukkah that there's a thing called Megillah Antiochus. There's actually a Megillah that was written, and it's not the Sefer Yosefon. The Sefer Yosefon is another opinion. But that was written by a person that he had a certain role in officialdom at that particular time, and he was an observer and a very flowing writer, a reporter, and he wrote down a pretty trustworthy description of a lot of what happened in the war between the Hashmonaim and the Yavanim, and basically it can be accepted and it's trustworthy, but it's a little bit of a doubt as to what his personal views were on certain inyanim. Therefore, some of the big Chassidim didn't really like studying that work. Anyway, that's a whole big story, the Indian of the Sefer, the Yosefon, or Yosefon, or whatever they call it. That's another Indian. But there's a Megillah that was written called Megillah's Antiochus. And it was apparently one of the kavanas that they had when they wrote that Megillah was that also it should be read. And therefore there are some places that they study during Hanukkah, they study this Megillah. But it's very hard to say that it gained a tremendous official power by Yidden, like the Megillah's Esther. What we see that it's brought down in the Gemara, in the Sekta Megillah, that Esther required, and she asked from the Chachomim that they should write in such a way that it become one of the holy books of the Bible. It was a special request that was made, and the Chachomim agreed, and they were of the conviction that Megillah was written by Ruach HaKodesh, and it was a holy Megillah, v'chulu v'chulu. However, we do see that there was such a supposition on the part of the Chassidim that there should be a Megillah Shut Tes Kislev. Now, in the same way, I feel that when I get to Hey Teves, that there should also be, or there could have been a supposition on the part of the Chassidim to write a Megillah called Megillah's Hey Teves. And we could say, why would the Chassidim at the time of Yud Tes Kislev, why would they have wanted to write a Megillah? And in the end, it doesn't appear that the Alter Rebbe was furiously against the idea, that he had certain worries that he didn't want trouble with the Misnagdim. There were certain reasons why he didn't actually allow it to happen. But it's not that he disagreed with the whole idea of mamish. Why? Because we see that as history goes by, there can be, we get all the way down here to Toshin Samches, and people know that there was, an arrest of the Alter Rebbe. They know that certain things happened. They know certain inyonim which may be important in the history. But to say that they all have a clear, succinct picture of everything that happened and what was the significance of this compared to that, I would say that even some of the bigger Chassidim in the Lubavitch probably not clear on certain points, or they don't necessarily know what are the interrelating inyanim between Inyan Zeh and Inyan Zeh. And therefore the Chassidim felt that if we wrote the whole thing down and we made it clear and it would be a fixed Megillah that could be read and that would have been under the, what you might call the inspection of the Alter Rebbe. He would have examined the whole Megillah. Well, then the whole Inyan would be preserved for history in a way that the significance of that history would be easier for everybody to interpret. Because you would know the basic facts, you would know how they happened and how they interrelated one to the other. It would be easier to draw a conclusion when I get to what was the real significance for the history of Pnimis HaTorah V'Karita B'Zeh. So in a similar way, those who wrote that Megillah's Antiochus at the time of the war at the Hashmonaim against the Antiochian forces, they had a similar idea. They didn't want that all the detailed stages of the war should be lost to posterity, and the ability to interpret that in the proper way. However, the Chachomim, having made such a tremendous emphasis on the Neres, well, that somewhat put the whole history of the war slightly into the, what you might call, the background. Therefore, Yeshloimah, that didn't become a tremendous requirement in the whole keeping of Hanukkah that you had to be blocky in the Megillah's Antioch. Shenke, by Purim, the Gemara says that the Chachamim saw it as one of the holy necessities, that the whole Inyan of Purim, that Megillah should become a historical chiyuv on the part of all Yidden to read the Megillah and to know it, and to have detailed knowledge of it. However, when I get to Hey Teves, it's interesting that even though not many years have passed since what the actual Hey Teves occurred, there's a lot of people, I think, Kabbalah, you're not supposed to hold hands like that. Mustn't be mishalab with your fingers. Certainly, if you do that, cholila, you're more kavules, you're more dinim. Yeah, that's right. The reason you're allowed to do that or do that, but not cross the fingers. So therefore, the years are not all that many, but the number of people who would already be able to tell you exactly what happened. Hey Teves, they know Hey Teves is such a big day in the Lubavitch calendar, And something very significant went on. It's got something to do with books or Sfarim. Really, they probably don't know a great deal what it's all about. I mean, ultimately, it's hard for any of us to know the ultimate significance of these things. However, it's well known that our Rebbeim were very given, all the Rebbeim were very given to libraries. They loved Sfarim, and they had tremendous devotion to Sfarim. It's well known that the Frierdiker Rebbe, even in the very, very difficult times in Riga, when he had almost nothing to live from, and his whole household was almost on the starvation line, that the Frierdiker Rebbe, if he heard a book was being sold in some Medina outside where he was, he would write letters and he would borrow money or get together a bit of money to make a what they call in those days a dispatch note for money. How do you call it? A money order, to send over to this particular place and get the sefer, even though in the household they didn't have what to eat. It's well known that our Rebbeim were tremendously devoted to Sfarim. And it gets up to, over the years, it got up to tens of thousands of Sfarim. It was passed down from one Rebbe to the other. The Rebbe Rashab also bought huge amounts of Sfarim. The Frierdiker Rebbe added to them, and so by the time the Russian Revolution occurred in Ruslan, the so-called Bolshevik uprising, our Rebbeim had huge amounts of Sfarim ascended in Lubavitch, which had come down from the Alter Rebbe. Some of them were from the Baal Shem Tov, and some of them were even from Talmudiya Baal Shem Tov. Now, when I say they were from the Baal Shem Tov, the Baal Shem himself didn't write any Sfarim. However, there was a siddur that the Baal Shem Tov used to daven in, and he wrote certain inyonim in ink on the side of the siddur, certain little, noticing points that again to the siddur, and some of the usages of the Lashonos which he wrote have actually come down to us. We actually know about some of them. And if I had time, I would maybe tell you one or two of them, but I don't want to sort of get off the main point. But there is amazing things. So this siddur was in the possession of the Alter Rebbe, and it was given down from Rebbe to Rebbe, and it came down, even though other things were lost, this sefer and others for him, from the Talmudiya Baal Shem Tov. One of the Maggid himself didn't write anything, and they all came down into this amazing library of Sfarim. Now, when the Rebbe Rashab was obliged to leave Lubavitch due to all the tzores in the Bolshevik war against the civil forces, and there was all sorts of other militias were involved. It was a tremendous mix-up, and a very dangerous time for Yidden. So the Rebbe Rashab had to leave Lubavitch, and that went in stages. First of all, the Rebbe left himself Lubavitch, and still the Yeshiva Tomchei Tmim remained, and a lot of the Bochum still learned in Lubavitch, and some of the Mashpiyim were courageous enough to actually remain in the troubled area. But in the end, the Rebbe Rashab gave the order, and they all had to leave Lubavitch, and they all moved over to the city of Rostov. The Rebbe Rashab wanted precisely to move to Rostov. That's a whole big fascinating story why he chose the town of Rostov. Nobody could really figure. But there were other places that were very anxious that the Rebbe should come to them, and he didn't go there. He went up to Rostov. And that's an amazing in its own right. However, on the way out of Lubavitch over to Rostov, and later when they were shipping huge amounts of the Sfarim, the Chassidim were trying to get the Sfarim from Lubavitch across to where the Rebbe was. Unfortunately, there were raids which were made on the trains and other public transport by these wandering militias who eventually took over. A lot of them became the Bolshevik or the Communist Revolution, and they took over the whole country. They raided these trains and they plundered things on the trains, and unfortunately they got their hands on a huge portion. When I say huge, I'm talking about thousands of Sfarim, they got their hands on Sforim from the Rebbe Rashab's library, which included, of course, all the Sforim from the Rebbeim, and they took them, and to this day, some of them are still sitting either in Petersburg or in Moscow in certain museums which they have. All the king's horse and all the king's men, which have been used to try and get the Sforim out of their hands, so far have not helped. Despite the fact that a lot did get out, they did get a lot out a few years ago. When I say a few years ago, we're already talking about even before the Stalfus of the Ravitson, about in that time, Toshim Mem Vov, Toshim Mem Zayin, they did get a lot of them out. And a lot of the Sifrei Mamorim that we learn today are due to the fact, particularly the Rav Rashav's siddhas, are due to the fact that they did get out from Russia. And now the thing is that the so-called present regime is more liberal towards religion in general. So why shouldn't they let the Sforim out? They first know that these Sforim are tremendously valuable historical adequate objects, and they just will not let them out because they want to keep them for their museum value and everything. They don't let them out. So to this day, there's a huge part of that library which still is in plunder under the hands of the Russian government. And even though all the good relations are going on nowadays, and the rabbis talk with with all the presidents of Russia and all the ministers and Geschäften of the Lepuyo, they have not let out a huge part of the Sforim. But a lot of them were got out, let's say, about 15, 20 years ago. They did get a lot of them out. However, a lot did get out, and then they went into the areas where the Rebbeim were. And when the Friedrich Rebbe was centered in Russia, he somehow or another managed to, even though he moved around a lot, he managed somehow or another to transport this huge library of Sforim, at least from one or two places that he would have control over. And then when he left Russia, that was the amazing koyach that he had, the Friedrich Rebbe, to be poiled on the Soviet authorities that they should let him take all of his Sforim. It's one of the famous event that occurred. It's one on the famous event that occurred that the Friedrich Rebbe said to them that if they don't let him take all of the Sforim, then he's not going to go. I said, what do you mean you're not going to go? I mean, okay, they're so fine, all right, so don't go, we'll put you back like Weiswasser. But it turns out that they wanted already at that point very much to get rid of the Friedrich. Since they decided to send him out, it was going to be a big complication for them if he were to remain. So they wanted really to get rid of the Friedrich Rebbe. So there's a famous story where they came into the room and the Rebbe Rayat said, unless they give him all the library, all the Sforim, he's not going. As they didn't know what to do. They were absolutely, what does it mean he's not going? What does he mean by that? So they were completely dumbfounded, and they picked up a telephone and they called up the big window in Moscow, wherever it was. They called up the so-called Politburo, whoever they were, the big knobs. And in those days the telephones were old, sort of clanky sort of telephones, and people used to shout through them, and you could hear, you could hear in the same room the voice coming through this, sort of rather shaky type of instrument called the telephone. And the Friedrich Rebbe heard the guy on the other end. The Friedrich Rebbe heard him say, "Listen, just get rid of him. If he wants to take all the Sforim, we'll send some trucks and we'll carry all the Sforim with him. The main thing is get him out." And that was the expression that they heard, that they must send him out. And so he left, and there were these huge trucks and semi-trailers and all sorts of things that they had to supply to take all the
Why do they want to kick him out?
Huh?
Why do they want to send him out?
So if you're not informed about that, then we'll just have to leave that for another time. So they gave all the Sforim with the Friedrich Rebbe. Yeah, that's what actually happened. And he took them out of Russia into Poland, and they drayed around in all sorts of amazing places, and the Polish government also put their fingers on part of it. The Polish government also got a lot of the Sforim when the Friedrich Rebbe had to leave Poland, because he left by a special transport at the last minute, and it was only with tremendous seyata d'ishmaya divine, tremendous heavenly help that they got all this for him out. But in the meantime, even the Poles, Yamach Shimon, they got their hands on a lot of this for him. But they got them back. The Rebbe, using all the diplomacy through some of the Rabbonim in America, he got those for him out. I can't remember the exact date. Maybe around about the time that the Rebbe had one in Atlanta, a heart attack, around about Tosh Lamed Tes. Well, that's when they got those for him out. That's when they from Poland. But in Russia, they've only got a very small amount of them. A lot of them are still there. But the whole massive body of the Frierdiker Rebbe's library, which is huge, did eventually arrive in America, and it eventually became the property of Lubavitch in America, and there's a whole big building there alongside 770 where all the Sforim are kept. And that's one part of that building is where the Rebbe used to spend Shabbos and Yom Tov. After he had the heart attack, he and the Rebbetzin used to spend Shabbos and Yom Tov in that building, and the Rebbe used to just walk back and forth from him instead of going all the way home on Shabbos and Yom Tov. It was one hour. And in that building, that's where all the Sforim were kept, and huge. And so the question is, the whole question arises, whose Sforim are they? Understand who do all these Sforim belong to? So the Frierdiker Rebbe had a one and only grandson. The Frierdiker Rebbe had only one grandson, because the Rebbe never had any children, and the Rebbetzin Chana, that was the sister of the Rebbe's Rebbetzin, she had one child, and the Rashag was his father, the Rebbe's brother-in-law, and there was another daughter and her husband, but they were killed. One in the Shoya, how do you call it, the Holocaust. They were killed, and the Rebbe used to say Kaddish for them. The Rebbe, I mean the Rebbe Melech Mashiach. He used to say Kaddish on Kofei Tishrei, I think it was. Kofei El. He used to say one of the late days in El, he used to say Kaddish for the daughter and the son-in-law that were Rachmanin killed in Goya. So Kumtes, the Frierdiker Rebbe had one Einikut, that's all. He had one grandson. So what happened was that he and other members of his family, they came up with the idea that they were inheritors, they're direct blood descendants from the Frierdiker Rebbe. So they felt that according to American law, anything the Frierdiker Rebbe had should be their inheritance, should be their heritage, which means that they had the right to all the things that the Frierdiker Rebbe had. So they decided that a lot of these for him were of tremendous value. The Siddur of the Baal Shem Tov, which he actually got his hands on, but fortunately it came back, and hundreds of others for him from our Rebbeim. And you have to remember that amongst all these for him, a lot of them were actually manuscripts from the Rebbeim. I mean, they were actually Ksav Yad, just for Yad from the Alter Rebbe, many from the Mittler Rebbe, and from the Tzemach Tzedek, whole reams and boxes and full of actual manuscripts in handwriting from the Rebbeim, from the Rebbe, or from all the Rebbeim. And so there's a tremendous monetary, historical, sentimental. I mean, it's just impossible to describe how precious those things are to everybody concerned, and just the fact that is the Ksav Yad of the Alter Rebbe, for example. As well known that the Alter Rebbe brings down in Tanya, and it's brought down in the Gemara, that when a great person writes something, that he writes his whole essence into that thing that he writes. That his whole etzem goes over. That's the greatness of Ksiva. And therefore, when the Alter Rebbe, if you have a Ksav Yad, mamish from the Alter Rebbe, then you have the Alter Rebbe's etzem. You've got it. Mamish, in some ways, even more of what you had him when he was living in the world. It's Kimofua in Siddur. So therefore, these things are of unbelievable value that it can't be described. Their value. So unfortunately, this grandson and certain people in the family, not the Rashag, not his father, and at the beginning it appears not his mother, but later she became involved in somewhat. without going into one or two painful things that happened, they decided that they're going to take their Yerusha, their what do you call inheritors. The Sfarim are there. They're theirs. They don't belong to anybody. They belong to them. So they started going clandestinely into the library and taking Sfarim out. Mamish Kipshuta, they took out a lot of Sfarim, big boxes full of the really precious stuff. They took the Valtem of Siddur, they took all sorts of other very, very important Kisvei Yad and all, manuscript, all sorts of other inyonim, and they took them out in big boxes and they put them into hands and they took them away, intending to sell them or to keep them, in different ways for sentimental or other value, that they are the inheritors according to American law, and so therefore they have the right to take them. So immediately the Rebbe, of course, began to realize that this was happening, and then the Rebbe protested, and there began a whole series of Fabrengen from the Rebbe where he protested in the most terrible way that these foreign were being taken out of the library. And you might say, well, how can he protest? That's just an unfortunate fact that people are taking this foreign from the library. So the Rebbe introduced a whole new, well, it's not new, but to the American mind, the Rebbe introduced a whole new idea, and that is that there's a leader, what he's a neshama klalius, called a Rebbe, and whatever belongs to him is not private property. Whatever belongs to him belongs to all the people, and to him, all the people who are connected with him. And for that matter, that could be, basically almost the whole world, but particularly to those who are his followers revealed, and they follow all of his instructions, and they live the way he wanted them to live. The Hasidim, that all of his property is theirs, just like it's his. In other words, a Rebbe doesn't really have any, what you might call, private property. And even his house, and even the things that he's got, to a certain extent, it all belongs to the Hasidim. He's like how do you call it? An entity, klali. He's not a private entity. And the Rebbe even said by one of the Fabrengen that even Friedrich Rebbe moved in his house from one room to the other, or he cooked a tavshil. It's the expression that he cooked tavshil, meaning he boiled up something in a pot, or who knows what. What are you guys up to?
I'm trying to get a chair.
A chair.
What?
A chair.
Operation Get Chair.
Chair. It's so the Rebbe said that was being done by a neshama klalius, and that those things he were using also were klalius.
You were saying about cooking with tavshil?
Huh? Yeah, but even when he would cook his tavshil, then that was the nasi, cooking the pot of vegetables or whatever it was, that belonged to the whole club. Meaning that the Friedrich Rebbe, like all the Rebbeim, was he was a Matthias Claudius. Now you take Mugushim American cop of mine and try and persuade him that there's such a concept. Boivers man, but according to American law, and it's clear, it's in a lot of countries in varying ways, whenever somebody has a blood relationship, like a grandson, then and he's the only blood relation that's alive, then he inherits all the stuff that the guy's got, or at least he has a right to inherit a lot of it, and that's not even disputable in law. That's just a simple fact. So he was basing himself on the fact that he's just got a simple legal right to do what he's doing, and the Rebbe decided to make a legal approach that was not the case, and that there is such a thing called a general entity, a general human being, that he's not a particular person, and everything he's got belongs to all of the people that are shayach to him, and they also don't have any right over it. They're all together. It's like a what you might call a balut klalit. It's a general ownership of all the people concerned. So at the beginning, people heard the Rebbe saying this, and I was there by one or two of the Fabrengens when the Rebbe said this, and he said it with the most unbelievable power, and it was just terrible. The Rebbe suffered so terrible from this thing that the Sforim were moving. And the Rebbe spoke about the whole dearness of the Sforim to the Frierdiker Rebbe, how each sefer was just geared to his very etem. And the Rebbe told an amazing thing, just to give you some idea how precious these Sforim were to the Rebbeim, that the Rebbe said, and the Rebbe actually smiled when he said it, he said according to the marriage agreement, that when he became the Frierdiker Rebbe's son-in-law, that he had the right that a certain fraction of the Sforim would be due to him. That if ever anything should happen to Frierdiker Rebbe, then the Rashag also had that a certain amount of the Sforim would be due to him, and a certain amount of the Sforim would be due to him. So he said that he was once in a private talk with the Frierdiker Rebbe, and he said to the Frierdiker Rebbe something about, with a smile, that he would be very grateful if he could be shown which Sforim, will eventually belong to him. If there's any, if anybody knows, which of the Sforim that are eventually going to belong to him, would it be okay if he would, maybe look specially in those Sforim, and maybe he could use them, So he said the Frierdiker Rebbe his whole face just closed. And the Frierdiker Rebbe didn't say yes or no. He didn't say, oh yes, he didn't say, oh no. He just never said anything. And he said, after that I never heard anything more about it. I never heard what's Sforim were mine. So he said, I could have said, what? He said, Elamai, I realized that the Sforim was so much part of my father-in-law that there just wasn't what to talk about. He couldn't talk about parting from his Sforim. It just wasn't shayat. They were just so part of him that he couldn't. However, the new thing that the Rebbe said, that just like they were part of the Rebbe, they were really part of everybody. And they weren't just part of the Rebbe, they were part of everybody. But I was there when the Rebbe told that story, and he made me smile, a very deep smile, the Rebbe, and he said, look, I could have pushed a bit if I would have wanted. He said, but when I saw that the Rebbe didn't answer me, he said, I never mentioned it anymore. He never brought it up again.
You say this in front of all his
as far as Lafi said, at the Sforim, a tremendous, unbelievable factor in Lubavitch. They weren't just stomach bizarre. So, what happened was that people came to the Rebbe, a very choshev people in the Lubavitch hierarchy, and they said to the Rebbe, listen, what do you need a whole huge, fight with these people, and they've got legal factors on their side. Buy them, let's make a huge, appeal. We'll get together a huge amount of money, and we'll buy the Sforim back. If they're interested in money, then we'll pay them millions, and we'll get the Sforim back, and then everything will be quiet. They won't have to worry. So when the Rebbe heard that, the Rebbe got furious, and the Rebbe said, Aveda Zora. The Rebbe said, guilt is Aveda Zora. The Rebbe said, money is idolatry. He said, to pay money for the Rebbe's Sforim, he said, that's no way, that's not going to happen. No way. So these people said, well, what do you intend doing? So the Rebbe said, we're going to go to the courts. So I said, the courts is the Goyim. The Rebbe said, doesn't matter. We're going to go to the official courts of America, and we're going to establish that these Sforim belong to Lubavitch. So this is the only way. Because whatever you do, these guys are going to dray one way or the other. It's going to be proved in the American courts that those Sforim belong to Chassidim and to everybody. So these people looked at that. When the Rebbe first said this to his advisors, and they said, listen, man, that's an almost impossible task. I mean, these people got the law on their side. Normally, a person who's an inheritor, he gets the inheritance. I mean, that's it. The Rebbe said, no, we're going to fight them, and we're going to convince them. And that's the beginning of the whole story of Teves, that they called in this lawyer. What was his name? I've forgotten his name. They called in this very special lawyer, and the Rebbe spent a lot of time talking with him and, briefing him and prompting him and telling him all the things. And it began this very famous trial, which took months. It took months and months. It just went on almost endlessly in the court of this guy trying to bring all sorts of proofs, that the Sforim should really belong to him. But he didn't really have a great deal to say. He just said, I'm the inheritor, so they're due to me. And every now and then he would just repeat that in all sorts of posh ways. And the most people who spoke, absolutely overriding majority of the time of the court was taken by them hearing from the Hasidim, what does it mean, a Rebbe? What does it mean, Hasidim? What does it mean, the relationship between Hasidim and the Rebbe? And how can that add up to an equation that all things that belong to the Rebbe really belong to the Hasidim, and the things that belong to the Hasidim belong to the Rebbe, and it's all like one big, public property that's public and private at the same time. That's the way it is. And these Chassidim, some of the really big Chassidim in America, who know how to talk well and everything, they were brought in, and the court heard them at length. And the amazing miracle was that these judges could have said, listen, we're already tired, we've had enough of this thing, let's get down and paskin. No, one after the other, they heard all these Chassidim, weeks on end. These Chassidim came into the court, and they all prepared themselves very well, and they spoke about what's a Rebbe, what's Chassidim, what is Chassidus, and they spoke at length about, how Chassidus came into the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid, and these goyim that were sitting on these judges that were sitting on the board of judges, they became tremendous Bekiim, in the history of Chassidus, and in the concepts of Chassidus, and in all, was a Rebbe, was a Chassidus, who was the Baal Shem Tov, and who was the Maggid. Just unbelievable what they heard. We could have envied the education that these guys had at the hands of these Chassidim who came in. And then there was a big suggestion that maybe the Rebbe would have to go to court. They would want to bring the Rebbe to court, and the Chassidim didn't want that. The Rebbe would have to appear in court. That's the last thing that anybody wanted. And so the Rebbe spoke also with the lawyers. He was from Shayat, and a whole series of diyunim took place, because it looked as if they were going to demand that happen. And then all of a sudden they decided not. It was a tremendous miracle that they said not to call the Rebbe to the court, and they said that they have enough evidence from all the Hasidim, and there's no need to bring the Rebbe to the court. But that was a big change. At one point it looked very dark, as if the Rebbe was going to have to go to the court. So just to give you some idea of how serious these guys took the whole thing, these judges, to do them justice, just how serious they took the whole thing, is that there was one of them, one day, he came up to 770 in a big car, and he drove around the service lanes, and he went over to the other side of Eastern Parkway, about whatever the numbers are, 784, or whatever it is over there, opposite 770, and he found what he was lucky, he found some place where to park the car, right? And he parked the car, and he sat in the car for hours, and he watched 770. He just sat in the car, and he just looked at 770. And on an ordinary day, let's say a Wednesday of a certain week, and he just watched what was going on. And they say he stayed there for hours on end, something like 6 or 7 hours. It took a long time, and he just sat there watching with his eyes 770. In other words, he wanted to get some feeling. What's this place 770? What are all these people going and coming? He probably saw the Rebbe leave or come, and he was observing. So these judges, to do them justice, they indicated tremendous patience and tremendous fairness to the case of Lubavitch, and to trying consciously and honestly to understand what was this whole concept of a Rebbe, what was this whole idea of Chassidim, what was the whole idea of the teachings of Chassidim. It's really amazing, the whole story. So what happened was that he he apparently went back and he gave over his impressions to the other judges, and it went on a huge amount of time, the whole thing. And then on this happy day of Hey Teves, that was the day that they actually gave out their ruling. And their ruling was that there's a general Joma called a Rebbe, and whatever he owns belongs to all of his followers who are called Hasidim, and they paskin absolutely on the side of Lubavitch. I mean, word for word what they'd been told by the Hasidim and the people on the side of Lubavitch, and they completely ruled out this fellow's right to the Sforim. And it was considered historical thing in America. A lot of legal authorities said it's a huge step forward in the history of law in America that they could actually paskin against ordinary American law. That here's a guy that he's an inheritor, and he took a lot of Sforim. He's not a crook. Nobody said he should be put in jail, or nobody said he should be fined, or he did what. And nonetheless, they paskin that he's got to bring them all back. They said that he's got to bring back all the Sforim. So of course everybody knows he made an appeal, and the appeal went up into what they call, was it the Supreme Court? He wanted to go up into the highest of all the courts. But they didn't agree to that. They took it up to a much higher court, but not the biggest court in the whole of America. The one underneath that. And the interesting thing is that one of those judges was a Schwarzer. A Schwarzer, and he was very active in paskening according to the previous thing. And also all of those judges, they had to read through all the previous stuff. And they spent, hours, countless hours of their time reading through all this business about sitters, about the Rebbe's, and about it's just mind-boggling. And nonetheless, they backed up the previous judgment also, b'malui. They didn't question anything. They said that everything that the lower court said, they agree with it, 100%. It's just Nissim. And the Kislev of the year, I've forgotten which year it was, they began to bring back the Sforim. And there was these big vans came and taking out all these Sforim. I mean, it was hundreds of Sforim, taking them out and bringing them back into the library of Lubavitch, and all the Chassidim standing around dancing. Here they're bringing back all the Sforim and taking them into the library, into the building alongside Seven Tony. And it's just an amazing story that I don't think it has any precedence in the history of Yiddishkeit that a Goyish court should paskin such a thing. I mean, I don't think there's ever been a thing like that Chassidus just took over the whole American legal system, and they ended up paskening exactly the way Chassidus said, exactly what the Rebbe said. And people said to the Rebbe at the beginning, Rebbe, you haven't got a chance. Don't do it this way. Let's find some way around. And Rebbe said, no, we should wait. We're going to go to the courts. And the Mir Hashem will help us. We're going to win. People couldn't figure, why is he getting into this terrible sakona? He could lose everything. I mean, if they were to have won, they would have come and taken as many Sforim as they wanted. They would have had the right to just keep taking Sforim, almost without limitation. Probably there would have been some ruling that Lubavitch could keep some of them, but it would have been just an unbelievable downfall. And yet, nonetheless, that's what happened. The appeal was a complete backing of what was the original judgment. Really, we can say, after having examined all these amazing details, what we can say is that the Rebbe saw here a further development, an essential development in the conquering of the world, alidei pnimis haTorah, and the eventual bringing of the Gula, because there was nothing that the Rebbe did all of the years of his Nasias, and even prior, which wasn't somehow linked to the Gula Shlema. Everything the Rebbe did Koil Yimei Chayecha Lahovil Yimei Samo Shiach. Now that was the Friedrich Rebbe said that. And so the Rebbe, everything the Friedrich Rebbe said was by the Rebbe, that was just absolute, law. There was no way around the smallest thing that the Friedrich Rebbe said. So if the Friedrich Rebbe types that Koil Yimei Chayecha Lahovil Yimei Samo Shiach, then you can be sure that the Rebbe lived that way ever since the moment he heard that. That's how the Rebbe was, and that's how all of his leadership was around that whole thing, how to bring the Gurishlim. So if the Rebbe said they've got to go to the courts on this absolute key issue to the whole existence of Lubavitch, then it must be a way of being Makar of the Guru. That must be the way to the Guru's Shlema. So what we can tell you is like this. The reason I made this little get-together is that we should have some sort of background on what we're talking about tomorrow night. The mashpiyim that are going to talk about Hey Teves, then I wanted you to have some sort of a musag, as to what really did go on here, apart from all the tremendous exciting details of all these appearances in the court of all the different big chassidim and all the things that they said and all. And then there was the amazing simcha that occurred when the final psak din went through, and the whole speech and parkway, not just 770, went on wheels. I mean, people started dancing, and the amazing thing was that the Rebbe hadn't actually been told clearly 100% the final thing, and the Chassidim were already dancing on the street, and the Rebbe was sitting in his office, and all of a sudden the label came in, the label Groder came in, and the Rebbe said to him, was it was tanzman dort? And the Rebbe asked him, what's the big simcha going on out there? The Rebbe, through his window, he could be aware of the fact that a lot of people were dancing and a lot was going on. So the Rebbe asked Leibel Groder, simcha zu mahi osa, it's a pasuk in Gaelet. So he said, Rebbe, we've won the case. And then he began to tell the Rebbe what happened. The Chassidim had already picked it up through the what do you call it, the media or something like that, the telephones. Well, they already knew, before Kavioho, before the Rebbe actually heard officially through his secretary the actual psak. Listen, I'm sorry, you guys. We're finishing in a few minutes. But anyway, they already heard. Before the actual psak was actually given to the Rebbe. And then there was what they call Shivas Yemei HaMishter. There were 7 days in which Chassidim, Mamish, Fabrengen, day and night in 770 and everywhere throughout the world. And over here they had several big Fabrengens. The building of 770 was already finished at that time. And the mashki was flowing and people were Fabrengen and dancing, and it just went on. And all of a sudden the Rebbe stopped the whole thing on the 7th day, and he said that everybody's got to go to their Rav, and they've got to have a faher in Chassidus and in Niglo, the whole thing that the Rebbe, as it were, put the brakes on this tremendous simcha, day and night, that was going by all the Chassidim throughout the world. All of a sudden the Rebbe said he wants everybody fell into a panic. The Rebbe said that he wants a written report from every Chassid what was the outcome of the faher that his Rav made with him. And so everybody went crazy. We were all writing these things. Everybody ran to his Rav, and he had all the mashpiyim, everybody. And they had to have this test in Chassidus and in Nigla by your Rav. And then the Rebbe said he wants everybody to write it in. So everybody got scared. They thought, it's going to read all these reports. It's unbelievable. People from all over the world are going to be sending in these reports of their tests that they had with the Rav. And so then all of a sudden the Rebbe said, after he'd already got all of the people to write in, the Rebbe said he's going to take them out in huge bags, and he's just going to put them on the tziyun of the Friedrich. He said he doesn't have time to read all of them. First he got all the people worked up, and then he said he's going to take all these things, and he's going to take them out and put them on the tziyun of the Friedrich Rebbe. And he said that all people here should visit the Maras HaMakpelah. All the people in Eretz should go to the Maras HaMakpelah and to the Koisel and a few other places, and that they should be Mo'er Rachamim and a whole thing, a whole amazing that the Rebbe said at the end of the 7 days of celebration, the end of the Shivas Yemei HaMishter. However, suffice it to say what is the Indian? What happened here? What is this? How did the Rebbe see that this was the way to be Makarev, the Gula Shleiman? So we could say that it's poshut. The conquering of the world on the part of Pnimis HaTorah, and the conquering of the world on the part of the message of the Arizal, which he gave out to the Rabbeinu Chaim Vital, that we've got to spread out the whole teaching of Pnimis HaTorah in order to bring Moshiach. And he writes over there, the Rabbeinu Chaim Vital, that Moshiach is Talui was there, that Moshiach can't come until that's happened. But the Rebbe saw that there was a necessity that even the whole, what you might call mishtar of the Goyim, and what represents their whole life, which is their courts and their ruling powers, and that's their achiza in Kedusha through the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, because according to the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, they have to have courts. The Rebbe saw that if that would paskin, and the Rebbe knew that eventually that's what was going to happen, because he was very confident that was the way it had to be done. Like we explained before, there was many people who tried to persuade him not to do it that way. But the Rebbe saw that if that whole power, which is the legal functioning Al Pi Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach power of the American system, which represents the whole, in a way, the whole civilized world, without being disrespectful to other countries, because unfortunately, whether they want it or not, they're to a certain extent dependent in America, whether that be for their benefit or not. Anyway, that happens to be the case. The Rebbe saw that if that huge system would all be able to become a medium for paskening according to Pnimis HaTorah, and would also do it having heard what is Pnimis HaTorah, and in the humanistic minds of Goyim there would already appear the sparks of Chassidus, and they would understand the relationship of a Chassid to a Rebbe, and they would paskin according to that. Well, that would move the whole world a huge, unbelievable surge forward towards the Geula Shleima. And therefore that's exactly what happened. But these Goyce judges, that they had all these Magushim Dika caps of ordinary Americans, and all they knew about law was all these old dusty books that they look up with their big, glasses every time to paskin a case, looking up all these old dusty, law books of the guns to do with, that they would paskin know that everything really runs. There's a Rebbe, and there's Hasidim, and there's a Navish when he runs the world, and he joins all the Nishamas together, and the whole thing, and there's a Indian from Pnimis HaTorah, and that's going to bring the Gula Shleiman. It was that they understood that, and they paskined that way, and they even faced a huge claim against it, and they paskined even further that way on a much higher level. But that is the beginning of the beetle of all of the Goyim to Elikus, and the beginning of the Iskalas of Lishum Sofik, that's what the Rebbe, one of the kavanas that the Rebbe had in this whole desire, not under any other way to approach the whole matter, only that way, but it's built Sofik that the Rebbe saw that this was the whole immense step towards Mola Ha'oretz Deya Es Hashem. But that's the inyan of the Gula Shleima. And therefore, under no circumstances would he hear of any other way, the Rebbe. And even when things were going difficult, there was also attempts to say that, look, we can still back out, we don't have to do it this way. The Rebbe kept saying, no, we must go forward, and so on. And then there was this very tremendously devoted lawyer that he managed to just listen to everything the Rebbe said, even though he didn't really hold that he had any chance at the beginning. And eventually they won this unbelievable victory. And that's the inyan of Hey Teves Bekitzer. So what it means is a further unbelievable step. You might say, well, that happened, X number of years ago, and Mashiach didn't come yet. What's the story? So why Mashiach didn't come yet, I can't answer that question. We have to turn to Hashem. He's the only one who can answer that particular question. To say that the world hasn't altered since then, what it means is that throughout the world there's been a contact, because a lot of people followed that, there's been a contact and a certain awareness that by Yidden, a certain inyonim, and they have an effect even to the point of swinging the huge legal system system of America into following it completely. And I think I told you once, I was a short time after the whole Indian Teves, I was out in the city of Perth in Australia. I think I told you guys the story. Even if I did, it doesn't matter if you hear it again. I was out in the city of Perth, and I had a certain personal reason why I had to be there. But at that time I was also collecting for She was talking to me. So I decided, since I'm in Perth, I'll go to a few addresses that people told me that might get a bit of stock here for the yeshiva. So one night I went out with a guy that was driving me around. We decided we'd go to a certain suburb. We'd heard there's a few people, Yidden over there, that gave if you asked them for stock, because they don't know much about it over there. In the big cities of Australia, it's very well known, but over there it's not so well known, the union of charity and stock. So we decided we'd try our luck. So we get out there and we're going towards a certain place. My driver, he didn't know exactly where the street was. It was like two streets that met together, and they had a similar name, or it was like a continuation of one, and he wasn't sure 100% where to go. So he said to me, "Listen, it's better we ask somebody what to do." So I said, "Okay, well, who are we going to ask? There's nobody on the street." It was nighttime, nobody around, a very posh suburb, nobody around. So he said, "Well, go into one of the houses and ask somebody." So I was a little bit, I thought, I don't know, you're driving me around, I have to go in and ask. But I thought, okay, since that's the way he wants it, I'll go in and I'll find out. Maybe I can find out where to go, because I didn't really know the name of the street myself either. But anyway, I go and knock on the door. It's an ordinary Goyish house. Comes out the owner, a Goy. He comes out, and he said, "What can I help you?" He sees a bearded rabbi standing there. So I told him basically we're looking for this in this place. And he said, "Oh, yes, I know the street, and it's around here, and you go here, and you go there, and what number do you want over there?" And I told him. He said, "Oh, yeah, that's Mr. So-and-so, he knows who that is." And in the meantime, my driver had also parked the car, and he'd come in to see if he could he realized that maybe he should help. So he came in, and all of a sudden he looks at us, and he looks at me and him, and then back and forth, and he says to us in a strange Australian expression, "Are you guys Hasidim? Are you a Hasidim?" So I thought to myself, what on earth is this? In the middle of a posh suburb in the southwest of Australia, do you know what that is? Somebody asked me about Hasidim, and I thought, it's not normal, So I said, "Well, yeah, we try to be, Hasidim." So I was sort of feeling my way, what's going to come out of this. So he says to me, he said, "Are you connected with this big rabbi?" There's a very big rabbi, and he's an American. He's very, he's big influence. So I said, "Well, which rabbi? Who I'm already beginning to tremble slightly. He said, "Which rabbi are you referring to?" So he said, "Oh, he was on the cable television the other night, and he's a big one, and he lives in Brooklyn there, and there's something about, some Russian word, something about, Habovich or Lefovich or Lipsky or something." So I said to him, "Oh, you mean Lubavitch?" And he said, "Oh, yes." That seems to me to be the word. By this time I'm absolutely dumbfounded. So I said, "What did you see, man? What happened?" So he said that this cable television, and this rabbi came on, and he spoke, and he said, it was very powerful, and he said, it's very expressive. So he said, "My wife and I, we were watching the television, and we were very impressed." He said, "My wife and I, we were very impressed." I said to myself, wow, this is absolutely amazing. So I said, "Could you tell me what did you hear? What do you understand? What was the key of the message? What did you pick up?" And he said, "Oh, yes. he said something about that the whole world's going to be better. It's going to be a big, what he calls it, or something, but things are going to really be better. So I said, yeah, well, you're right, but, we can't just wait for that. We've got to work for it. So I ended up having a whole gesprek, a whole conversation with this, Polish Australian guy, he didn't know anything from Gornish. We had a whole talk about the Gulag. In the middle of Perth, in the middle of a posh suburb. No. So you mean to tell me that Hey Teves didn't achieve anything? Oh, yes, it did. And this is spread all over the world. And we'll talk more about it tomorrow, Baby Sam. I have to go now because my taxi driver said if I don't come on time, then he's going to drive away and leave me. So I've got to go. I don't want him to do that.
You can stand by him.
It's not for him and not for me. It's not good for him and it's not good for me. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask you guys not to stay here too late now, is to get a proper night. Tomorrow we'll have normal Seder, and we'll have another Fabrengen tomorrow. It starts with the other must be, but at least you'll have some idea what Hey Teves is all about. I wanted to sort of get across to you the Megillah of Hey Teves. I should read the Megillah together. We should know what it's about. And the Megillah reached even people way over the other side of the world, and they said we were very impressed. And that is happening the whole time, all over. It's happening everywhere that people are beginning to hear, and they're being impressed. So have a good Friday, Hey Teves, you guys, and it's a shame to be Hey Teves in the form of Geula Mami.